It's good that everybody's here tonight. I hope you're doing well. It's time for us to begin our class. We are in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, so if you want to turn there, you can. We're in chapter 5. We're going to be picking up with verse 15, as we're just making our way through this practical section of the letter. So we're winding down the month of April, getting into the month of May. We've got 1 month left, obviously, through May, and then our summer series will start in June. So just be looking for that flyer and that announcement with all the speakers and our theme, as that's right around the corner. Let's have a word of prayer together. Father, we are grateful that we were able to wake up and to see another day. We are grateful for all the opportunities and blessings that this day held for us so many hours ago. We're grateful for the presence that you provided for us as we went to work and our kids went to school, and we encountered and lived in a world that is sometimes very upfront in how they are against us in the faith. And yet you were with us every step of the way today, and for that we're grateful that you fulfilled your promise so far, and that was that you would never leave us, and that is that you would never forsake us, and we're thankful for that. We're thankful to be able to gather in a place like this, to be able to open your word, to be encouraged, to be challenged, to be convicted, and ultimately to be shaped into the image of your Son. And not just shaped in our mind and in our heart, but shaped with our entire life so that we can speak like Him and act like Him towards one another and even towards the complete stranger. We pray for your blessing on our class tonight. It's in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so just as a quick reminder through this section, we've divided everybody in this section into three groups. So the first group, in verses 12 through 13, are those who are over you in the faith, those who admonish you. So we spoke of that section more of church leaders, so our elders, our shepherds, and then what we can give them, how as members under their care and under their leadership, through our submission and our respect, what we could give them. Then the second group, which are the idle, the faint-hearted, and the weak, how there are specific verbs to this group within the church. So these two groups had to deal more with internal life. And so now we're going to get into the third group. And this is going to be more of the external. And quite simply, he says this. He doesn't identify them, so we're going to infer the group. But he says, see that no one repays anyone evil for evil, but always seek to do good to one another and to everyone. So who is the third group? If the command is not to repay evil for evil, who do we infer is the third group? Not just us, but there will be a specific one. Who would the inference be?
Outsiders.
Outsiders who are doing what?
Well, that may do evil to them.
Okay, that's the idea. It's real simple. It's real obvious, but it would be people outside of the faith, but people who are doing evil. Now, sometimes it could be people in the faith too. It doesn't mean that they're not. But most likely it would be in this. Why would Paul, to this church specifically, single out a group committing evil things against them? Why would he single them out enough to be able to say, here's how I want you to respond to this specific group? Why would he single them out in verse 15 with this church? Why would he single them out? How was this church born? Remember all the way at the very beginning. What were they born? What was the context, the historical context? What was happening? They were being persecuted. Anybody who's going to be persecuting Christians, I would venture to say we'd all be in agreement that that's a pretty evil thing. So we need to learn how to handle when evil comes our way. How do we respond to this? I keep referencing him because he's mentioned in the book of Acts. If you have a brother by the name of Jason who is being dragged out of his house and dragged out of the assembly, and he is getting beaten, and his only crime is that he wears the name Christian, that's pretty evil. If you've got people who are possibly losing jobs, losing family members, and their only crime in the eyes of the world is that they follow a Jesus of Nazareth, that's pretty evil. Why we may not be in that extreme, raise your hand if you've ever encountered evil directly at you or somebody that you love. Okay? We have to learn how to handle that. You got to learn how to respond. We can't just ignore it. You can't just pretend as if it didn't happen. Even if we tried, the way we would feel when evil comes our way, when something bad is said or done, whether directly to us or somebody that we love, we've got to be able to learn how to respond in that way. So Paul is going to, in one verse, but in other places, he's going to connect to that. So what are we not to do, he says? When evil comes your way, bad, etc., when somebody is the source of problems in your life, and it looks like they're doing it on purpose, or your daughter's life, your son's life, your spouse, whatever, just something in that nature, what are we not to do? Why is that? Because every inclination is not to sit there and to take it. You can't talk to me that way. You can't treat me that way. You can't talk to my spouse that way. You can't treat my children that way. You can't do that, is our inclination. And he says you don't repay it. Miss Carol, you were raising your hand.
It goes with the same idea of loving enemies.
Okay.
The first thing I jump to is you're supposed to love your enemies.
Okay. So, all right. So this is a tie back to the Sermon on the Mount teaching from Jesus. Paul has this in other places as well, other letters. Peter has this statement in his two letters as well.
A couple of things come to mind. He doesn't want them to engage in revenge, I'm sure.
Okay.
And, that would cause them physical harm, and in the situation they're in Thessalonica, that would be viewed as a rebellion and would end up getting the cause of Christ squashed.
Okay, all right. So a couple of things that you mentioned, and it's not just here, but in other places in the New Testament. One is that it assumes, and not repaying evil for evil, it assumes or infers that there's a vengeance/revenge factor at play. So the eye for an eye, but maybe to an nth degree. But even practically in Rome, Rome's not democratic. Rome doesn't have the mechanisms in place that we do from a law perspective, where we actually could have some sort of a voice. If they rebel, and I'm using that word because that's how Rome would have seen it, Rome would have come down hard. They would have come down even harder. Jason would not, they may have saved Jason's life, and 5 others would have lost their life in the rebellion. So that, it would have squashed it. I like how it would have ended it even before it began. So that's a good point. Okay, so one of the reasons from the vengeance/revenge factor is that ultimately it does belong to God. In numerous passages in both Testaments remind us of that and teach us that vengeance, whatever it is, vengeance belongs to God. Okay, what else? All right, so not just loving enemies, but then also, hey, if somebody does this, Jesus teaches in the Sermon on the Mount, turn the other. So if you get hit on one, turn the other. All right, what else?
Well, 2 reasons. One, it's just not good for you.
Okay.
I mean, it can destroy you. And then the other reason is that it's not a good example of how we should be as Christians.
Great point. As much as we may think in our inclination to retaliate, to repay, and that it would be good, right? Where I'm going to do this to right a wrong. It actually doesn't right a wrong. From an internal aspect, it's just not good. Because even if and any of us who have ever truly done this or given in, even on the slightest when we were younger or something like that, it's not like the feeling goes away just because you finally gave somebody a piece of your mind. In some cases, it can make it worse. And not only possibly make it worse between you and that other individual, it's not like other people aren't hearing and seeing these things too, which is to your example point.
It becomes almost a contest. I'm going to avenge what you did to me, and then you turn around and avenge me, and it's just back and forth.
Sure.
It never ends.
It could. Yes, the cycle never ends.
And you might possibly shame them
Okay.
into changing.
It is embarrass them and shame them with the lack of repaying. Because the expectation, the way the world works, the expectation is, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you? do something. Because the expectation is you would say something, or you would do something, or both. Okay? Go ahead. Yes?
Well, I'm gonna be the devil's advocate
Sure.
a little bit, I guess. I can see a verbal exchange and you trying to,
Sure.
not say anything and all that and turn the other cheek. But if your child is there and they are about to be killed by them, we still turn our other cheek? Do we try to help our child? I mean,
You're talking about self-defense?
yeah.
Okay. I can give you my personal opinion on that. Scripture, people are going to interpret that different. So that is going to be something that I would say up the very beginning, that self-defense, people within Christianity are going to interpret that in a couple of different ways. There are those on the extreme that say you don't do anything.
Yeah, it would be so hard if you're sitting there with your,
Correct.
doing your job and
Right.
they're going to, do something.
Right.
And it would be very difficult.
It would.
To turn your other cheek, and I don't know if that's really what he's saying, I just don't know.
I know. And in some cases, again, we have the mechanism in place with our laws of our land that if that is something we choose to do, then we have laws in place that protect you for that. Or I don't want to say enable or empower, but I mean protection is probably the better word, should that be what you do. I think as a shepherd, you take care of those who are under your rule. So if I have a family, to a shepherd, if I could use that image, you have a rod and a staff. I think it's well within your right to be able to do that if that is. I can't speak for everybody, but Elisha's opinion is that if it is that extreme, that self-defense is warranted or needed, by all means. That's my opinion. There are several that might disagree, and that's fine. The other thing I would say is that those are the extreme cases. I think the one that is probably more likely is when our kids come home and we find out that there's been some terrible things said about them on social media. What do I do then? Or my spouse and my boss just, my spouse is saying something, my husband, my wife, and it's like you just feel that, I can't believe your boss would talk to you that way, right? You just feel defensive. What do you do in that? I think is kind of what is coming to my mind. But the self-defense question is a very good question, and it's something a lot of people wrestle with. Justin, go ahead.
Like verbal insults and things like that, does that actually meet the definition of evil?
I would, in some cases, because
I'm really asking.
no, I mean, where Jesus says, where do those things come from?
Right.
I mean, so in a verbal insult, I'm not going to say what's coming to my mind as an example, but I think we probably share. I mean, if somebody's cursing you out, if somebody's gossiping, I think a verbal insult is somebody who's using social media to just spread rumors, slander. I kind of think in those terms. If somebody just says you're a dummy,
Yeah.
something, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Evil to me would be, okay, well, if a guy murders your family, and then you go and murder his family, well, that's different than having that person face the consequence of what they did.
Right.
Specifically.
Right.
Their family has nothing to do with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their actions. Or like a more modern kind of thing, right, is you think about South Africa and they
Sure.
had apartheid. Well, now it seems it's flipped around
Mm-hmm.
to where now white folks there are being
Sure.
treated the same kind of way. Well, that's evil for evil.
Yes.
I think that's probably what this is talking about also.
I would think so. So it goes with what Doris mentioned in principle, the cycle. It ends up, whoever ends up in power keeps the cycle because I remember what they did to us kind of mentality. I
But
think,
justice would never be
Correct.
evil for evil. That's just justice.
yeah. So I'm thinking along those terms as well. I think verbal insults are the same maybe on a one-to-one level. I think this is also probably mass if a whole city is against you or people are trying to get a whole city against you, which is what they seem to try to be doing in Acts. That's pretty evil. To slander a group of people for their faith, to gossip to the point that you make them public enemies. They're not just private enemies anymore, they're public enemies, which we seem to be kind of trending that way. The antagonism, I think that is the seeds of evil. So I think it's a little semantics in some cases, but I think we're on the Same page, yes.
Three different things really quick.
Sure,
To what Sharon said, self-defense is current tense.
yes,
Taking revenge seems like you're taking revenge for something in the past.
possible, yes,
They're two different things altogether.
sure,
But then in Romans it says, never take your own revenge, leave room for the wrath of God.
yes,
Well, what does he want us to do with our wrath?
yeah,
You know, to practice self-discipline. But I did teach a lesson to the ladies on kindness, and it was like, no matter, I heard a saying, somebody say, just like 2 days before I did that lesson, that no matter what someone else has said to you 5 years ago, yesterday, that was mean and hateful, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect your spirit of kindness, who you are within yourself.
Sure.
And who you're supposed to be.
yeah.
But that is hard to live.
No, it is hard to live. And when we're thinking in these, so that one-on-one is extremely hard. And if it were on a national level, again, they didn't have it then. We have mechanisms in place at the moment. We have protections in place, are probably the better way. So not only does he say in Romans 12 that vengeance is mine, you know, God quoting that, but then immediately after that, he speaks of the government. And he speaks that at least part of the role is not to bear the sword in vain. So it's very possible that the vengeance of the Lord, it's possible. So like what Justin was talking about, the murder of a family, for instance. Well, it should be the case of the state or federal government or both, to be able to take that matter into their own hands and according to the law that's on the books, carry vengeance out within that place. It's not ours, and I think April was hinting at this and others. We don't know when to stop when we take it in our own hands. Okay, so if somebody, it's the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, well, which tooth? Which one's more valuable? The one in the front? Is it the canine that's right here? Is it the molar in the back? Which tooth do we take? At some point, somebody did make an observation. If we did live by eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, everybody would be blind and everybody would be toothless. I don't know if you've ever heard that or not, but it would be the case because we don't know when to stop, because the issue is that everybody is going to cross lines that they shouldn't cross. Whether it's defined as evil or not, the other person may see it that way. So maybe you and I had an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but what happens if you and I have that? And what happens if you and I have that? Somebody somewhere's got to break the cycle, and what does Jesus do? He breaks it, but he breaks it in the most inconvenient and the most uncomfortable way. So go ahead.
Along with that, you know, those things, seeking revenge and getting even and all that, can be all consuming.
Sure.
And that is the biggest danger in there long term.
Sure.
That becomes your whole focus. Everybody has heard about Hatfields and the McCoys. I saw a documentary one time where they went around and met some of the ancestors, and what it boiled down to, a lot of them still hated each other, and they could not remember what they
Talking about, yeah.
And they got consumed by it.
It also brings us down to their level.
It does. It does. And again, and Paul, you mentioned again Romans 12, you heap burning coals of fire on their head, is the proverb that he uses in that section as well. Somebody somewhere not only breaks the cycle, but somebody somewhere has got to start putting the fire out, because a fire is what is raging. And at some point it's got to go. The question for us is, are we willing to go the length that Jesus went to put it out? That's the question. So what do we do with our wrath? What do we do with all the other stuff? What did Jesus do? And the question, the test of repaying evil for evil is not what somebody else did. We already know we're supposed to follow his example. The question is am I prepared to follow the example that he laid to the extent that he laid it? That's what's difficult. Because like a sheep before the shearers, he was silent. Interesting.
It's amazing when you do that, because I had an instance, how shocked that person is when you come back with the loving response.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lady attack me one time verbally on the phone, and we were talking, and I wasn't trying to retaliate, and I said, I want to be your friend. And I really didn't want to, but I told her that because I had a feeling she was probably very friendless.
Sure.
And thought we were best friends forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because she was hurting. And
Yeah.
that's usually the case, why somebody comes after you.
Yeah. So it is historically accurate to say that some Christians, one of the ways Christianity was able to shift the Roman Empire in the ways that it did was that when they were persecuted, they didn't go, so Polycarp is burned at the stake and he doesn't do anything. Again, I don't know what he would have done if he had laws in place like us, but he doesn't do anything. And if you look at the history of very early Christianity, one of the reasons they made the indention into the Roman Empire the way they did is how they responded when persecution came. So the apostles are persecuted and they go home praising God worthy because they were counted worthy to suffer in His name. Whether right, wrong, and fair and different, we get caught up in the right and wrong and the fair and the unfair, and I get it, that's human, that's the humanness in us. One of the obstacles to not repaying evil for evil, but it's unfair. It's not right. And you're not wrong. And so it's difficult. So, segue, he tells us to seek what? So if you don't repay evil for evil, how do we fill the void?
To do good.
To do good to who?
To them.
So let's go in the order that he gives it. To do good to who?
Yourselves.
Okay, among yourselves. Maybe there's something going on within the family, maybe there's not, but either way, what's the obligation and responsibility we have to each other? So that means that when we fall short of the expectations of Christianity among each other, what do? We still do good. Now, the doing good, what does the doing good look like in the context of chapter 5 so far? Among each other. What's the doing good? In the context of chapter 5, among each other, what's the doing good?
Reject evil.
Okay, rejecting evil. What else?
Be patient.
Being patient with each other. We just studied that last week. Be patient with them all. Okay, what else? What is doing good among each other in this context?
Love them.
Continue to love the brother. Continue to love the sister. It's difficult. They may be making life difficult. They may be making the church difficult. But we're still patient, and we're patient because we love them, because love is patient. Okay, what else? Yes, ma'am. Okay, so they may be what you were talking about, Linda. They have a hard time. They may be having a weakness for some reason. Find a way to encourage could be a positive, turning into a positive. Okay, what else?
Pray about it.
Could pray about it. We'll see him say that in a minute, right? Pray without ceasing. How about an admonishment? Is an admonishment doing good? Is an admonishment saying good? Sure it is. Sure it is. Yes, ma'am.
Boundaries.
It could be boundaries. It could be just... Paul and Barnabas split. We forget that. And it's probably not their proudest moment, but it was probably pretty wise to, we're just not going to at the moment. We'll place a thing in between us. Go ahead.
But Dr. Searcy said to the Barnabas split that Paul came back and
Yep.
sang his praises,
He did.
and they reconciled. So
They did. So it's not a forever, it's a temporary. Sometimes you just need to cool down. And you allow space to cool down. Sometimes, as we would say, you allow space for level heads to prevail. Sometimes it is, I want to reconcile. And reconciling is more important than me having my way at this moment. So in order for us to reconcile, I'm going to provide the space. The doing good is complimenting a Barnabas. He compliments John Mark, who was the source of the split at the end of his life. He still finds a way to do good. It's just that doing good looks different for all of us. But the point is that we do good among each other first and foremost. Go ahead.
As I'm thinking about what I said, I know insulting people is wrong. I was like, I put evil in like a whole different
Yeah.
category for some reason, you know,
Yeah.
like demons and stuff like
Oh,
that. And like serial killers maybe.
maybe. I heard the maybe. No, I think we understood where you were coming from.
All right.
I'll speak for everyone. I think we understood where you're going. Go ahead.
I don't know if it's disagree, but I think the general principle is we don't respond in time.
Correct.
No matter how big it is on the evil scale, or low, we just don't respond in kind.
Yeah.
And we see too much of, especially our leaders, not doing that.
Sure.
And it's disgusting, to be honest,
Yeah.
that we don't treat people with respect, even when they're not treating us with respect.
Sure.
And, something I always told my kids was, you do the right thing even if the others are not.
Sure.
You do the right thing.
Yeah.
And so that applies to everything.
I think, if you look at what Jesus did and said, and what, even some of the apostles said, at times they're willing to say hard, true things to people, and you have to be willing to say that, even sometimes, they're not going to like you because of it.
Sure.
Jesus, what did he say? He called Pharisees a brood of vipers,
Mm-hmm.
called them whitewashed tombs. He, Paul said people were controlled by their stomach, and they were destined for eternity in hell. And they said, and I'm not saying you go around necessarily to everyone's face all the time like that. You obviously have to live and work in a society and but I think we can't always bite our tongues to the point that we're unwilling to say truthful things to people that may help them better understand what's going on and understand
No, sure.
what's going on in the world.
Sure, and that is, and I would agree with you, I think where most of us would trip and fall, or in the repayment category type thing, is that they probably had spoken to us in anger or rage or just at a split moment or something, as an example, and we would have returned it, we would have returned the hard truth that needed to be said, but it wouldn't have been for the betterment of a soul or a heart. I just want to say it to say it. Does that make sense?
You're saying you should use it strategically when it will benefit them and help them grow, but not necessarily out of spite.
Yep.
And
Yep.
response to
Yep.
something like that.
Yep. To me, that's just my thought. I'm not saying that I don't disagree at all. I mean, I know the having to sit at a table with somebody, and sometimes I've had to say it, the preface is, I'm about to say something that's extremely hard. I need you to know that I love you, but here it is. It's hard to do that when our emotions have gotten the best of us in that moment. I think you mentioned that, the current aspect of that. Or we've allowed them to simmer for so much that I'm just going to go give, Daniel can't speak I'm going to go tell Daniel, he just can't speak to me this way. There's a better way for me to tell you that. I can say that hard truth without a twinge of anger. And does that make sense? That type of thing. So I think it's verbal, and that's why I went the verbal route as much as the other, because there are just some people who don't really care about they just want you to hear something. So to who? To each other, and then to everyone. It's like that's hard enough to do that among each other, and now you want me to do this to everyone, right? You said do right no matter what. Wait a minute. That driver has no right to do what he did when we're both supposed to obey the traffic laws. I didn't say it was it. No, it's the degrees of difficulty that he keeps taking us down, and it's like, how far down? But the secret to all of this, if we've already assumed the humble position that we're supposed to have, no one can take us any further down than what we already are. Because is that not humility? If we've already put ourselves under, you can't take me any further. I've already went under. I died in water. I can't go any further than that. I can't go any lower than that. So I've already assumed that position. I already know that he's going to repay vengeance for vengeance. I know that. I know he's going to take care of it. Where I am going to be is how we can respond. And I know not to respond in kind. So we respond with goodness. And I think and Carol, you mentioned this, I think that's why Jesus says, this is Elisha, and maybe I'm trying to help myself, I don't know, you can tell me. But I know that he says that you pray for those who hate you, bless those who curse you, do good to them, love them, those kind of 4 things. We're not always going to be masters of those 4. I've often wondered whether the Lord gives those 4 that just simply says, just do one of those. I wonder. I mean, this is my transparent moment, and maybe I'm hoping. I get that maturity is supposed to be all 4, but to be quite honest with you, it's not like I really want to tell my little one if she happens to have somebody who's just absolutely taking her to task with words at school, go and find a way to do good for them. because she may not feel like doing that at that moment. To be honest, because I haven't felt like doing that at that moment. I'd be more than happy to stay over here on this side of the auditorium so I don't have to see somebody on this side. And I'm not saying feelings rule all the time, but I wonder if the wisdom of the Lord is our propensity is to do nothing, and the Lord is saying there's always something. That's just Elisha. I don't know. It's an interpretive question. Take. Go ahead.
Like Justin, when I see the word evil, I kind of think of evil, you know, the hard stuff. But what's discussed right now is evil. It's destructive. It's outside of creating, making peace. It's outside of being harmonious. And by definition, that is evil. And that's not my automatic reaction when I read that word.
Mm-hmm.
The things you're saying now are evil.
Mm-hmm. And it's all of it. So it's on the lower level, and then the things that we unfortunately see society. And society calling good evil and evil good as well. Very quickly, what good is it to seek to do good? What good is it? Okay, it's shocking. Pleases God. Never know. That is correct.
It puts me in a positive mode when I go to Philippians 4. Whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, that's something I can do. And I can't handle the other person, but I can handle what I'm trying to accomplish.
Sure.
One thing I've learned, and possibly attributed to my years in nursing, when someone reacts to me, says something nasty to me, but even in conversation, to remind myself, I don't know what they just left. I don't know if they may have just heard their mother had died, their husband had a stroke. I don't know what situation is lying right behind them that's affecting the way they're treating me.
Sure.
And if I can keep reminding myself of that, it does help me to be more gentle.
Sure. There are other factors in play for not just us, but for the individual or group or whoever it is, for sure. What else? Okay, and the reason I framed it this way is because sometimes we'll ask, well, what good is that going to do? So what good is it for me to seek good?
You may be the only one who's done anything good, said anything nice to me.
Okay.
Like they say, you may be the only Bible they see.
Could be the only Bible. Okay.
One of the things that God knows what's going on, and that is a great comfort to me, that He understands
Sure.
how I've been wrong.
Sure.
Sin not. Ephesians 4,
Sure.
15, 16, 17. So avoid sinning by reacting.
Avoid that, and because he'll say not only sin not, but don't let your anger go down, and don't give a foothold to Satan, who's already got a foothold apparently because he's the source of all evil anyway in whatever's happening. So why give him more room, and why give him more space? And it goes back to what April mentioned. Why do it in your own life for that, in all of this? Jesus. Did he do good for an enemy? Name me one. Judas. What did he do for him? Washed his feet, accepted him. Even though he still did what he did, there's no guarantee that good, seeking to do good to anyone in here or anyone in general, there is no guarantee. Judas proves that. You still do it anyway. Judas proves there's no guarantee. Sometimes, what good is it to seek good if there is no guarantee it's going to change somebody? Well, because you do it to please the Lord, like what Miss Maybell said. Give me another enemy, and give me another thing what Jesus did for him or her.
For me.
Okay?
You know, when you think about it, all of us, He did it for us.
Okay? While we were still yet enemies. Okay? What else? Saul/Paul. Why are you persecuting me? Very easily could have snapped, just verbally said something, and there's no more Saul. And he changes them. What else? What other enemies? How about Malchus with the right ear? That's a true enemy. Because he's probably going to be responsible for putting cuffs on him, chains on him.
Soldiers who nailed him to the cross. And
Okay.
he asked God to forgive them.
Soldiers. How about Peter, who denied him? There's a lot of, actually, if you sit down. Go ahead, thank you. Oh, you got wave a little bit. You guys let me say that.
How about the Samaritans?
Okay.
When the sons of Zebedee asked to bring
Great.
down thunder and lightning, and Jesus said no.
Great point. Great point. He did good for another Samaritan, a woman whose morality we assume was evil. But he sat at the same well and had a conversation with her. A woman caught in adultery. It's evil. It's an evil practice. And what does he do? The list goes on. That this right here, I wonder what it looked like in his life. And you mentioned again, at some point, if I go through all 4 of them, and I actually go through the book of Acts, and then I get to the book of Romans, I find myself. And I find myself in every single one of them. Yes?
Going back to the question of what good is it to seek to do good, I flipped that to the question of what does it do to me if I seek revenge?
Sure.
And the answer is it destroys me inside.
It does a lot. So we're moving slow. I appreciate you being patient. But these are things. I will say that I struggle with this, not because of me, but now as a husband and a father. It's not fun when you see somebody that you love. I never really understood that until afterwards. Because you always think it's tough for yourself. But you learn, we all do, whether we admit it or not, we kind of learn to be able to have a little Teflon and nothing really sticks and have a hard skin. But when you see somebody else have that, that's the test sometimes for me of this. Because the repayment may be that you didn't do anything to me at all, but I'd like to do something to you because you shouldn't have said what you said. You shouldn't have done what you've done. And yet, I still see Jesus. I wonder what it was like to see the shepherd struck and the sheep scatter. But he still goes faithfully. I know it's a test. I know it's hard. Find a way. Seek to do good. And as a precursor for next week, if you need to know where to start, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances. For this is the will of the Lord in Christ Jesus. Class is yours.